Welcome back to my channel, guys. My name is Prince Tlali, and this is True Crime and Chill. Welcome, hi. If you are new here, welcome to my channel. My name is Prince Tlali, and this is where I come to tell you about some of the most shocking true crime cases that happened in South Africa. So if you are a fan of true crime, or you just want to keep hearing from me every week when I upload a video, I would highly suggest that you press that subscribe button, like the video, and also comment down below what you think after watching the video. Tell me if maybe you think the person could have gotten more of a sentence than they got. Tell me any opinion that you may have. If you have any theory of your own, if you have any question of your own, I would love to hear from you. I would love to know what you think, and I would very much appreciate your support of my channel. And most of all, thank you for even taking the time out of your day to watch one of my videos. And I would also highly suggest that you check out my other videos as well. They are very interesting, and I will be uploading a video every single week just for you. So without any further ado, let me not waste any more time. Let me just go ahead and get into today's case, what I have for you today. Okay, look, for today's case, I'm not gonna lie, it's gonna be quite a sensitive one. It's gonna be a very hectic case to listen to. It's gonna be a very hectic case for me as well to even talk about, because this is something that's just very brutal, something that's very, very nasty to do to anyone. No one deserves to have anything like this done to them. But for today's case, I'm going to be talking to you guys about something that happened in 2017, and this was actually covered quite a lot in the media. It was covered a lot in the media. It's a very popular case. I've seen that there's a lot of true crime YouTubers who talked about it as well. So I thought I might as well also tell you about it in case you haven't heard about it. I got your back. But I gotta warn you, it's gonna be something very, very heartbreaking to know about. So just get ready for this one. This week's case is about the brutal and horrific murder of a 22-year-old girl by the name of Karabo Mokoena. She was 22 at the time of her murder, and this was back in 2017. And Karabo was born in 1995 on the 27th of March in Soweto. And today I'm going to be sharing the story of how she got brutally murdered by her ex-boyfriend Sandile Mantsoe in 2017. And really, I gotta say, guys, this is one of the most horrific things that I could have ever heard of. One of the most horrific things I've ever heard about. So yeah, I'm just gonna tell you guys a story so that you can just know what actually happens out there, what people go through when they're in relationships and toxic and abusive relationships. So like I said, Karabo was born in 1995 on the 27th of March in Soweto, and she was described to be a strong, intelligent, and very high-spirited woman. And I gotta say, when I listened to a podcast by True Crime South Africa about her, and they played a clip where she was giving her opinion on a certain subject, she really did sound like someone who had a lot of fire in her, someone who had a lot of opinions to give, someone who had so much to say. And what I thought about when I listened to the words that she was saying, all that came into my mind was, had this woman not had her life taken away from her so early, we could have heard a lot from her. We were going to hear a lot of what she had to say over the years, because she sounded like someone who wanted to talk, someone who wanted to have people listen to what she has to say. And when I listened to that, just those few seconds of what she had to say, trust me, I also felt like I could listen to her talk all day. That's just how much she moved me with her words. So she was a very high-spirited woman, a very strong and intelligent woman with a lot of dreams, a lot of ambitions. And this just it's just very, very cruel that it had to happen to her. Karabo was a part-time student who was doing her business studies in 2016, and at this time she lived with her parents in Soweto. When her close friends described her, they described it to be someone who was joyful and someone who was peaceful to be around. And they also said that she was at peace with herself in a way that she was very comfortable in her own skin, and that's how confident she was in herself. And when I look at some of her pictures, I could see that as well, that she really, really loved who she was. She loved herself. She wanted to be more of herself because she was just that comfortable in being who she was and staying true to herself. And so that's what her friends described her as. It was even said that even the woman who was her spiritual advisor said that even from the first moment she met Karabo, she felt like, you know what, there's just something about this girl. There's just something about her. There's something unique about her. And really, even if you also go to look at some of her pictures and try to follow up on her life and try to see what she did, trust me, you would also see that there was really just something about her. She was going to do something big had her life not been taken away the way it did. Karabo had a sister by the name of Buntle, and they shared a room together at their parents' house all the way up until Karabo decided to leave her parents' home. And it was said that she and Buntle shared a lot of dreams. And one of the dreams that they shared was that they wanted to open up a charity. And they even went as far as planning to launch a couple of NGOs together because it was said that Karabo had a very compassionate heart for people. She just wanted to help out as much as she could. She was very compassionate, very passionate for people. So you could tell that she was a very big-hearted person. And she and her sister had this dream that was just going to help a lot of people. So like I said earlier in the video, you could tell that Karabo was going to be quite a force to be reckoned with. She was going to have a lot to say. She was going to have a lot to do. She had a big life and big dreams and ambitions ahead of her. So remember I mentioned that she had a boyfriend by the name of Sandile Mantsoe? Well, she and Sandile met in 2016, and when they met, he was a father of three kids who were still toddlers at that time, and it was said that he was still married to his wife when him and Karabo met. But the marriage wasn't such a good one because Sandile and his wife were very estranged to each other. So they met in 2016, and when they started to hit things off, and there was a bit of chemistry between them, and that's how things started between them. Sandile was a graphic design degree graduate, and under his social media profile, it was stated that he worked for quite a number of companies in his lifetime. And you would think that, someone with such a degree under their belt would have strived to be a better person, wouldn't have thought of doing anything like this. But I guess a lot of things happen. I guess people just cannot help but become monsters when they really want to be. So he was a graphic design graduate, and it really seemed like he was going to go somewhere in life. Even when I was reading up about him, I thought he was going to go somewhere in life had he not been the kind of person he was. So when Karabo and Sandile met, he was self-employed. He was working as a trader, a forex trader, and it was said that he lived a fast-going life. The kind of lifestyle that was lived by people who earned a lot of money, the flashy lifestyle, the high city lifestyle that you could possibly imagine. So he lived that kind of life. But it wasn't really proven how successful he was at this career of his of trading. But it was said that one thing you should know about him is that he was very good at convincing other people that they too can actually become successful forex traders if they took his lessons. And it was said that he could charge up to 6,000 rand a day for a lesson. So for a lesson of just one day. So that's the kind of person he was. He believed in forex trading. He wanted to live this high flashy life. He wanted to, coach people in forex, and he was very good at convincing people to take up his lessons. We've seen this kind of thing happen on Instagram, on Facebook a lot of times. People who claim to be successful forex traders offering lessons to anyone who's willing to pay, anyone who's willing to take the lessons. So he was that kind of person. He would take up screenshots of himself trading. He would take up screenshots of his trades, and he would put them all over social media, try to market himself, try to get as much students as he can for his lessons. So he was just that kind of person who could just convince a person to just take up his lessons and just pay a lot of money for it. On the outside, it looked like Sandile had everything you could ever want put together. It looked like he was, he put himself out to be a model citizen. He put himself out to be an outstanding citizen, and he was even an outstanding member of his church. And so when him and Karabo met, they became like the perfect couple. It looked like there was something they were something out of a romantic movie or something like that. And so when they met, everything just seemed so perfect. Or at least that's what the people who know Sandile say about their relationship. Karabo's family, on the other hand, had different opinions about the couple. They really didn't share these opinions that the people who knew Sandile said about their relationship. And their reason for this was because in just about a month of them being together, Sandile started showing signs of aggression towards Karabo, and this worried her family. And in one instance, he even smashed her phone, and he even took her as well and smashed her against the wall. So that's how much he turned aggressive towards her. And Karabo went on to tell one of her friends about this. So it wasn't long before Karabo moved out of her parents' house and moved in with her boyfriend Sandile. But it was said that their relationship was very rocky from the start. And because of this, it wouldn't take long for them to argue. There would be like a little bit of peace for a moment between the two of them. And then just after that, another storm of arguments would start between the couple. 2017 started to come by. When it got a bit closer, Sandile's aggression towards Karabo got even more and more worse. His outbursts became a lot more aggressive. He got worse. And just as it was about to be Karabo's birthday in March of 2017, things got so bad between them that Karabo ended up taking pictures of her bruises and she showed her friends. And it was said that she also sent them voice notes telling them how bad things were between the two of them in their apartment, in Sandile's apartment in Sandton. A lot of her friends said that they tried to give out her like their concerns about the relationship. They tried to get her to leave the guy, but she just couldn't leave him. And one of her friends said that she was even willing to do anything for the guy. And we cannot really blame her because we all know how it is when you're in love with someone. We know just how much we can be blind to a lot of red flags. We don't see a lot of bad things about them. We just want to believe that there's a lot of good in them, even if they do a lot of bad things. So she just couldn't leave him, and we are not going to blame her for that. She was just a woman who was in love with a man she thought that she could have something special with. In February of 2017, her family started noticing that maybe Karabo's relationship is a bit abusive, and because of this, her mom was trying to ask her, she was trying to plead with her to come back home. She was even telling her that, listen, you have a place to live, you have a home that you can come back to at any time. So they were started to notice that the relationship maybe is not as good for her as she would try to believe it is. So that's how bad things were getting. Her family was starting to notice that the relationship is a bit abusive, and she was the victim in all of this. In March of 2017, the 27th of March in 2017, their problems started hitting their breaking point. That's how bad things were getting. And on her birthday, on the morning of her birthday, her family and friends tried to call Karabo, but no one could reach her on that day. But as the day went by, Karabo ended up calling them back, and she told them that, okay, listen, no, my phone wasn't really working. I couldn't contact you because Sandile had smashed my phone. So you could tell that they had another problem, another argument that they were dealing with. And as a result, Sandile took her phone and he smashed it. And because of this, that's why her family and friends couldn't reach her on her birthday to maybe wish her happy birthday, to try to talk to her and find out how she was feeling. But they couldn't find her, and it turns out that he had smashed her phone, and maybe they had a very nasty argument that day. When I say a nasty argument, I mean it, because apparently what had happened the previous night was that Sandile had beaten her up so bad that she had bruises all over her neck and her face. And it got so bad that one of her eyes was shut completely. That's how bad things were. It was also bruised all over her legs. And because of this, her mother made a terrible, terrible prediction that, you know what, something bad is going to happen to my daughter. This man is going to kill my daughter, because she saw just how bad things were getting between the two of them. But at some point, Karabo's brother ended up convincing her to go to the police station to lay a charge of assault against Sandile, and she agreed to this. But unbelievably, what happened was Sandile beat her to it. He went to the police station first to try to lay a charge of assault against her, to try to play this out as if like he was the victim and she attacked him. But when you looked at her, you could obviously see that she was the one who was victimized in this case. She was the one who had the right to put out an assault charge against him, but he had the same idea, and I bet he was thinking that, okay, if she does this, I'm going to get in trouble. So even though she was about to lay a charge against him of assault, he beat her to it and tried to lay a charge against her before she could lay a charge against him. And another unbelievable thing that happened was the response that Karabo and her family got from the police. You know, the response they gave Karabo was that she should reconsider what she's trying to do because they have no time to waste on like getting between a couple and whatever they were arguing about, getting in between couples' claims about each other. I mean, who says something like that? Why would you even think that this is such a small thing that you would be wasting time when someone comes and tries to lay a charge of assault and you could clearly see all the bruises and the marks on her body, and you would think that they're wasting your time? I mean, that's the response that the police gave them. It was so unbelievable, and I was so terribly shocked when I read about this. But that's the response that they got from the police, that they had no time to waste by getting in between a couple who's making a lot of claims about each other. But Karabo did end up leaving Sandile's apartment in Sandton, and she went back to her parents' home in Soweto. And as she did this, even though her physical wounds were starting to heal, it was said that her emotional wounds were still taking quite a bit of a toll on her, and it is so understandable considering what she went through. So she was still battling with what happened. She was still traumatized of what happened, that even though she was healing physically, emotionally, she was still very distraught of everything that had happened to her. So 2 weeks after the incident, Karabo and her friends went out to a club for a night out to try to have some fun. But unfortunately, they went to a club and they saw that Sandile was at the very same club that they were at. So when Karabo saw that Sandile was there, she called her mother to tell her that he is there. And what her mother advised her to do was, she advised her not to talk to him, not to even give him a chance to even say a word to her. And her mother also advised her to come back home. But somehow, like I said earlier, Sandile was very convincing. He was he was the kind of person who was very good with words. So somehow he managed to charm himself back into talking to Karabo again. So they did end up talking that night in the club, and they did end up reconnecting once again. Their reconnection, however, wasn't a happily ever after moment, because not long after that, Karabo was complaining to her friends that Sandile was flirting with other women, and he was bragging on social media about gifts that he bought for them. And on top of that, as he was doing this, he never even apologized to her for what he did to her, for the beating that he gave her the last time they were together. So not only was he flirting and not only was he buying other women gifts, he took no responsibility and accountability for what he did to her. On the 26th of April in 2017, Karabo told her mother that she and Sandile will be going out together, and it was possible that even though she hadn't moved back in with him, she might spend the night at Sandile's place. And after letting her mother know, her mother ended up calling her later that night to try to find out if she's okay. I mean, her daughter was beaten up by this guy, right? Her daughter had suffered a massive beating and a lot of injuries from this guy at some point. So of course, she wanted to check on her daughter to see if everything was still okay. So when she called, Karabo did end up answering the phone. But what was so strange about it was that she was whispering to her, saying that she couldn't talk at that moment, but she will call her back. So that was a bit strange because it didn't sound like she was very comfortable at all. On the 27th of April in 2017, this is when things started taking a turn for the worst, because her mother called her again, tried to call again, but she couldn't reach Karabo. And when she couldn't reach her even on the 28th of April, the family started to investigate what had happened to her, because now they were getting worried. It had been 2 days since they heard from her. And Karabo's mother started trying to reach out to her friends and to try to find out where she was. And they told her that the last time they saw Karabo, she was with Sandile at the club. And then after that, they don't know what happened to her. And when she tried to call Sandile, Sandile acted surprised that he was even hearing from her. He was acting surprised that she was asking him where Karabo was. I mean, you're the last person that she was with. Of course, you would have to know something about where she was. But Sandile acted surprised that he was getting a call from Karabo's mother, and he said that he didn't know where she was because she left his apartment the previous day. So as Karabo's family was trying to look for her, try to find ways they could maybe see or find out what happened to her, her siblings were still asking around in Sandton, trying to find out her whereabouts. And this is when a couple of cleaners came to them and gave them Karabo's ID as well as her passport. And they told them that they found them in a bin. So this seriously wasn't a good sign, of course. I mean, finding someone's ID in a dustbin as well as their passport, it shows that something horrible could have happened. And clearly, this was not a good sign. On the 30th of April in 2017, her family officially reported Karabo as a missing person, and she was registered as a missing person. And after this, Karabo's friends went onto social media to open up a campaign to try to find her. And as things were going on like this, Karabo's mother went back to Sandile again to try to ask him where her daughter was. And it got so bad that she even started to call him out by asking him what he had done to her. So remember, I did say that she made a prediction that, okay, this guy, the way things are so bad between the two of them, he might actually start doing something bad to my daughter. So she went on to ask him, what have you done to her? That's how much frustrated she was getting, because now it had been days since she had last seen or heard from her daughter. But you know, on one instance, what was so strange was when, again, Karabo's mother was talking to Sandile. She was still asking him where Karabo could be. And Sandile did something very strange. As she was busy asking him about her, he went on to say, quote, Mamzo, I don't know where she is, but I didn't kill her, end quote. First of all, her mother never mentioned the possibility of Karabo being dead. So for him to say something like this out of the blue really was a red flag that, okay, why are you talking about killing her? Why are you talking about her as if you already know that something had happened to her? So at this point, Sandile was talking as if like he was trying to clear himself out. If anything were to be found out, he was trying to make sure that he was in the clear, because already he was trying to tell Karabo's mother that, okay, listen, I don't know where she is, but I didn't kill her. So it was really strange. Even when I was reading up about it, even when I was listening to the podcast by True Crime South Africa about it, I really found it really strange that no one said anything about her being dead. But already Sandile is trying to say, okay, I didn't kill her. Why are you suddenly saying that? Still on the 30th of April in 2017, after Karabo was officially registered as a missing person, her mother and the police went over to Sandile's apartment in Sandton to try to ask him a few questions. But they didn't find him, and when they contacted him, he said that he would be back around 9 p.m. that night. And as they were waiting for him, the police had an idea that they should ask for the CCTV footage to try to see if they could find anything that could tell them or point them in the direction of where Karabo could have been or what could have happened to her. And this was a pretty good idea because it did end up helping the case quite a lot. And I'm going to talk about it more later in the video. But it was a pretty good idea of the police to end up asking for the CCTV footage of the last few days she was seen. So Sandile ended up coming back that night, but he came back around 9:30 p.m. And when he came back and when they started to talk to him, the first thing that he said was that he had no idea where Karabo was. And he tried to give off this idea that Karabo maybe could have went to London. And you and I both know that that wasn't true, because remember, I did say that her siblings found her passport and her ID from the cleaners in Sandton when they said that they found it in a dustbin. So how could she go to London if her passport and her ID are still in South Africa? So he tried to give off this idea, which obviously was a lie. So now things were starting to look a little bit suspicious in regards to Sandile's case. So after this, Sandile was taken to the police station for more questioning, and Karabo's mother went along with them to try to find out if maybe the police could find something that they could tell her about Karabo's missing. And, you know, as she was waiting at the police station, while they were busy questioning Sandile, a female officer came over to her and said that they should probably go into an office that she, could talk to Karabo's mother in. And as they went into the office, when they got there, unfortunately, Karabo's mother got the worst news any mother, any parent could ever get about their child. She got the news that Sandile had confessed that Karabo was dead. You could imagine how her mother was feeling at this point. I mean, she tried to get answers. She was hoping to find her daughter still living, but now her boyfriend had just confessed that Karabo had died. So even though Sandile had confessed that he knows that she's dead, he never admitted to being the one who killed Karabo, but what he did admit to was moving her body out of his apartment when he found out that Karabo had died. Sandile said that he took Karabo's body out of his apartment and he wanted to get rid of her body and he wanted to go dump it somewhere in Bramley, but he didn't just dump it in a ditch or try to leave it in a field for anyone to find. He said that what he did was he took pool acid, he took a tire, he took petrol, and he tried to set her body on fire to try to get rid of any remains of her body. And he even tried to take the police to where he said Karabo's body was. When they got there, they didn't really find Karabo's body, but it was said that at Sandile's parents' house, it was found that there was a ditch that looked like it had a lot of burned marks around it, like something had just been set on fire just on that ditch. But also when they tried to search that ditch around his parents' house, they still didn't find her body. So now it was a search for Karabo's missing body. Sandile did end up getting arrested for the murder of Karabo, and it took a few days for the police to put everything together. They were still trying to piece out together where her body could be. They were still trying to piece out together how she died, but it took a few days for them to piece everything and put it all together. But he was arrested for the murder of Karabo. And apparently on the 29th of April, a nearby police station in Doornfontein got a lot of reports of people saying that they see what looks like a burning mannequin in the far distance, but they weren't really sure if it was a burning mannequin or if it was a person's body. And that's how bad Karabo's body was burning at this point. So the police station in Doornfontein was getting these reports and they went to the scene to try to investigate and see what was happening. When the Doornfontein police came onto the scene, they did manage to see that it was an actual person's body, but they still had no idea who the body belonged to. And as they were still trying to figure it out, the police who were investigating this from the very beginning, the police from the Morningside in Sandton, they got in contact with the police from Doornfontein and they told them that they were investigating a missing person's case, and they believe that this person had been murdered. So it could be a possible match to the person that they're looking for. So they did get together, they did some DNA testing to the body, and they did find out that the body belonged to 22-year-old Karabo Mokoena. And I just cannot imagine how heartbreaking that must have been for her family to find out about this. And as heartbreaking as it was, her mother insisted on seeing her daughter's body. And even though the police were trying to say that, listen, maybe it's not such a good idea for you to see it, she insisted, and they did let her see the body. And there was a small portion of her legs that wasn't covered up. And because of this, she got to see from the start, like immediately when she saw her red painted toenails, that, you know what, this is my daughter. So she knew from the start that the remains that she was looking at were the remains of Karabo. And this must have been really, really horrific, really traumatizing for her to go through. Like I said, Sandile was arrested for the murder of Karabo, and when he was arrested, he gave out a lot of versions of statements that he later denied in court to have given out himself. And some of these statements were that one of them was that Karabo was killed by someone else, and he only found her in his apartment. And the only reason he moved her body was because, again, like I said earlier, he was afraid that this was going to be turned on him because he had been charged with assaulting Karabo before in the past. So the only reason he tried to get rid of the body was so that no one blames him for what happened. Another statement that Sandile gave to the police was that, um, he didn't kill her. And he even went on to change the part of her being killed by someone else. Now he started saying that Karabo committed suicide. He believes that she committed suicide, and he believed it so much because this had happened before. He claimed that Karabo had tried to kill herself before, but Sandile and a security guard at the apartment building saved her from doing this. So now it's no longer someone else. Now Karabo tried to commit suicide. She tried to take her own life. So this is another statement that he gave to the police. But of all the statements that he gave, this is by far the craziest one. Okay, get ready for this one because this is by far the craziest statement that I've heard anyone give. He said that Karabo sacrificed herself for a blood ritual that they did. She sacrificed herself to try to lift some kind of curse that was put onto them. And he went on to say that Karabo introduced him to a man she called Master. And this man performed a blood ritual on them to try to bind their relationship, to tie them together for all eternity. And the catch of this blood ritual was that if they ever tried to break up, there would be a curse on them because their relationship was believed to be something that was going to gain them a lot of financial success. And so because of this, they had to remain together for all eternity. And if they tried to break up at any point for whatever reason, one of them would have to sacrifice themselves because if they didn't, there would be a curse that would be put on them. And so Karabo killed herself for a sacrifice, to sacrifice herself for this blood ritual that was done so that they wouldn't be cursed. That's like the craziest thing I could have ever heard anyone say to the police. At this point, he was just trying anything to try to just blame this on her, to try to just turn this away from him so he wouldn't be seen as the bad guy in this. He claimed that Karabo sacrificed herself for this curse, and she did this by stabbing herself on the side of her neck, and she did this while he was out. And when he came back, he found her dead, and that's when he tried to get rid of her body. He said that when he saw this, he went downstairs to try to get a dustbin that would be big enough to fit her body in it, and he took Karabo's body and he put it in the boot of his car, and he drove to his parents' house to get the pool acid, to get the tire, and to get a 5-liter container so he can buy some petrol to try to burn her body. But like I said, he ended up denying all of this. He ended up denying these statements, and most of all, he ended up denying, by the time of the trial, he ended up denying ever saying anything about a blood ritual. So apparently he never said anything about it. Someone must have made up that story. Someone must have written that statement for him, but it certainly wasn't him. So he denied all these ridiculous claims that Karabo had sacrificed herself to try to lift some sort of curse from them because they had broken up. With that whole thing of getting rid of the body just so he wouldn't get blamed for it, in my opinion, if you didn't kill someone, but you found a dead body, it really isn't a good idea. It wouldn't be a good idea for you to move the body, especially if you are as innocent as you claim to be, because all you got to do is just call the police and not touch anything. So this whole thing of him saying that he moved the body to try to, make sure that he doesn't get blamed for this is completely ridiculous, because anyone in their right mind would know that you don't move a body, you don't touch the evidence, you don't contaminate a crime scene if you find a dead body and you are innocent as he claimed to be. What was also said was that it was very tough, it was very hard to determine what really caused Karabo's death, because as more inspection was being done on her, it was found out that a lot of her organs were removed, and it wasn't really cleared out that they could have burned to a crisp. Because some of her organs were missing, it was very hard to determine what really did kill her. Remember when I told you that the police decided to take some CCTV footage on the night when they were waiting for Sandile at his apartment? This again was a very, very good idea, because this footage ended up putting Sandile in even more hot water, deeper in the hot water of this case, because it proved his claim that she committed suicide to be a lie. Even her family denied that Karabo could have done anything like this. They denied that she could have tried to commit suicide, and they denied that she tried before, like Sandile said, to commit suicide. Because what made matters worse for Sandile was that the security guard he said that he had help from, he got some help from to try to save Karabo from committing suicide in the past. He was questioned about it and he denied everything. He had no idea what Sandile was talking about. So Sandile claiming that he got help from the security guard was also proved to be a lie. The CCTV footage was viewed on the 27th of April and on the 28th of April. It was seen that in the afternoon, the couple were coming back from an outing. And when they were coming back, there was a bit of distance between them, and Karabo was walking ahead of Sandile. And as she was walking ahead of him, she looked a little bit emotionally distraught. It seemed as if like they had quite a tense situation that had happened between them. And so you could tell that there was a bit of an issue that could have happened between the two of them. The next footage that was seen was the footage of them coming back from a night out. And this was the last footage seen of Karabo alive. And she still wasn't looking well emotionally at all. So you could tell that now things really were bad. She wasn't really happy at all in the relationship. And the footage was showing that something might have happened. Maybe they argued, maybe they fought, and she was still feeling a little bit emotionally distraught from the whole ordeal. During the trial, Sandile said that he left his apartment around 6 p.m. and when he came back, that is when he found Karabo dead. And even though it was said that there was a few minutes of footage missing, according to the state, he came back later around 6:22 p.m. He was seen entering the elevator around 6:22 p.m. He then entered to go back to his apartment around 4 minutes later. According to the state, it was really unlikely, it seemed very unlikely that Karabo could kill herself in those precise 4 minutes that he wasn't around for, because he claimed that, he found her dead when he came back. And the footage shows that he came back about 4 minutes later. So it was said that it's very doubtful that she would just kill herself in those very precise 4 minutes he was gone for. And to be honest with you, when I also think about it, I think it's a little bit far-fetched that it could have really happened like that, specifically like that, as he said, and as the footage showed. So I don't know. What do you think? Do you think it really could have happened like this? Or do you think he was just making this up because the footage showed that he was only gone for about 4 minutes? But I think it's a little bit far-fetched that, yeah, it could have happened in those precise 4 minutes that he was gone for. I mean, sure, a person can die in 4 minutes. I'm not saying that it's impossible for a person to die in 4 minutes. It's possible for a person to die in 4 minutes. Don't get me wrong. But what I'm simply saying is the way in which they kill themselves, the method of their death, and the method of the weapon that they choose to commit the suicide with, especially if they committed suicide, the weapon they use or the method would have to be very effective, like quickly effective. And if it would happen in 4 minutes, it wouldn't be something that would take time. And it would have to be something like, for example, shooting yourself in the head. If you shoot yourself in the head, you're going to die instantly. Or maybe if you stab yourself in the heart, you're going to die instantly. But she didn't stab herself in the heart. She stabbed herself on the side of the neck. And the position in which she stabbed herself really didn't show that it was the kind of position that would allow her to die in just 4 minutes. Since Sandile said that she stabbed herself on the side of the neck, it was said that for someone to die in that short amount of time, when they stabbed themselves in the neck, they would have had to have a lot of knowledge of the human anatomy. They would have had to know exactly where to put in the knife for them to die as quickly as she would have died if she really died in that 4 minutes. I found out that in order for you to die as quickly as that, when you stab yourself in the neck, you would have to stab yourself either in the jugular or in the carotid artery. And the carotid artery and the jugular are found just near your Adam's apple. So he said that she stabbed herself on the side of the neck. This is what he said from the beginning, that she stabbed herself on the side of her neck. And it would have been impossible for her to die within just 4 minutes if she did this. But if she had stabbed herself in the major areas of the neck, like the carotid artery and the jugular, then she would have died at that point, but she never stabbed herself like that. So it kind of also blew his theory of her stabbing herself out of the water. In short, a person can still die from stabbing themselves in the neck. You can still die if your wound is not properly attended to. You can die from stabbing yourself in the neck. But for it to happen in all of just 4 minutes seems very unlikely. And for it to, if it did happen like that, it would have had to defy all manner of statistic, and it would have had to be one hell of a chance. So yeah, you can die from stabbing yourself in the neck, but you wouldn't die that quickly. As the footage was viewed some more to try to see what happened, they saw that Sandile left again around 10 p.m. later that night. And when he came back with a wheeled dustbin. And if you know these dustbins, they're big enough. They're big enough to even fit a human being's body. So he was seen coming back with the wheeled dustbin, and he went back to his apartment with it. So he was seen coming out of the elevator again with the wheeled dustbin, and this time he was struggling with it, and it seemed like there was something really heavy inside of it. So at this point, you and I know that unfortunately it was Karabo's body inside of the wheeled dustbin. So this really did happen, that he tried to get rid of her body. But it couldn't really be determined if Karabo had died in Sandile's apartment before he moved her body, or if she was just unconscious when he put her in the wheeled dustbin. So it couldn't really be determined. And another thing that they were trying to figure out was whether she could have died when she was set on fire. Maybe she was still alive the entire time as he was moving her body from his apartment to where he left her body. But it couldn't really be determined if she was already dead at that point, or her body, or she was just unconscious from the whole thing. Maybe he hit her with something and she fell unconscious, or maybe he really did kill her in his apartment and he just tried to move the body to try to get rid of it, as he tried to with the whole dustbin thing. So because of this, Sandile's word was the only thing that could be relied upon about the whole thing, about whether she was still alive or whether she was already dead at that point. And he went on to say that she was already dead when he was moving her body. But I don't know, what do you think? Do you think she could have still been alive, only unconscious when he moved her body, or do you think she was already dead at that point? Let me know what you think. But I think that, it's possible that she could have died in his apartment and he just moved her body. Because if you really think about the dead weight theory, a dead body is not easy to move. A dead person's weight is quite a lot. So the way he was struggling to move the bin out of the apartment, out of the elevator, it really seemed as if, like, it didn't seem like this was a person who was still alive. But I don't know. Let me know what you think. If you think maybe Karabo was still alive at that point, or if you think she could have died when she was set on fire. When he got back, it was seen that he had latex gloves on. He put on some latex gloves and he came back with these gloves, and it was seen that he had a trash can with a couple of items inside of it, and he threw it in the trash compartment of the apartment building, and then he went back to his apartment. Remember that assault charge that Karabo laid against him in the beginning? Since much wasn't done about it at that time because of the whole situation of the police saying that they didn't have the time to deal with a squabble between couples, the charge ended up being added onto Sandile's list of charges. And this list showed that he was being charged with premeditated murder, defeating the ends of justice, and assault with the intent of causing grievous bodily harm. So things were really looking good for Sandile at this point. It really seemed like it was really over for him. So the charge that he thought was finally forgotten about because the police never took it seriously, it was added onto his list of charges. And you know what it means when you have a lot of charges on your rap sheet? You're gonna get a lot of years in prison. Now that Sandile was seeing that his world is crashing all over around him, like he was seeing that the walls are closing in on him, he tried a lot of schemes to try to delay the process that could end up with him being in prison. And one of his schemes was lying and saying that he was attacked in prison. He claimed that he was attacked in prison, and he also tried to accuse one of the police officers with saying that, you know what, if you bribe me, I could help you get rid of the charges. So he was trying anything at this point to try to get out of this whole mess that he created. And what was so worse about this was when he decided to badmouth Karabo. He decided to try to tarnish her reputation by saying that Karabo was addicted to the high lifestyle that she was living, so much so that it got her involved with a lot of bad lovers in her past. And because of this, he only tried to make her a better person. He tried to get her out of this addiction. He tried to make something better out of her. But Karabo only got more violent with him every time he tried to help her. So not only did this guy do what he did, not only did he take her life and he burned her body like she was nothing, he was now trying to tarnish her memory. He was now trying to ruin her reputation. He was trying to make it seem as if like he's the angel in all of this, and Karabo is all to blame because of the kind of life that she lived, the kind of people that she got involved with, and he was just trying to help. And the only thing, he said that the only thing he was guilty of was just trying to help out Karabo be a better person. And, the only thing he was also guilty of was just trying to, be there all the way until the end. So that's how much of a narcissist this guy was. And it doesn't end there. Trust me, it doesn't end there. So as he kept on trying to make himself seem like the hero of the story, like he was someone who was just trying to help Karabo come out of a bad addiction to the high lifestyle, as he was still making these claims, he went on to claim that even Karabo's family knew that he was a good influence in Karabo's life. Basically, he was the best thing that ever happened to her. They knew that he was a good influence. He even inspired her to have the kind of dreams and the kind of ambitions that she had. So that's how much of a narcissistic, you know what, I'm not even going to say the word, but that's how much of a narcissist he was. That's how much delusional he was. He just tried to make him seem as if like himself, seem as if like he's this hero that tried to save her. But none of these antics worked, okay? None of these little schemes of his worked, because after this entire process, finally in May of 2018, he was found guilty of all three charges. He was found guilty and he was sentenced to 32 years in prison. And if I had to be honest, I think that it's not enough. I think that he deserved to be in prison for the rest of his life. I think that he deserved to get a life sentence for what he did. So he got only 32 years in prison, but his lawyer said that this was a very harsh sentence for Sandile. He believed that Sandile could have gotten at least just 15 years in prison for this. His lawyer went on to say that 32 years is the kind of sentence that you would give to someone who is a hardened criminal, someone who's an actual threat to society, as if Sandile wasn't a threat. Because, I mean, what I was saying to myself was, if this guy had gotten away with this, who's to say that he wasn't going to do it to someone else's daughter? Who's to say that he wasn't going to keep on being abusive and killing more women that came into his life? So yeah, he was a threat and he deserved to get that 32-year sentence. And as a matter of fact, I personally believe that he deserved to get a lot more than he got. But yeah, guys, that is the case of Karabo Mokoena. It was such a tragic thing that happened to her. I cannot even begin to imagine what her family was going through, because this was a young and beautiful woman who had an entire life ahead of her, who had an entire world to conquer, and her life was just taken just like that, and it was just taken in the most brutal and the most horrific way you could ever imagine. But yeah, it was very tough for me to talk about this as well, and I know that it might be a very tough for you to listen to it as well. But if you did make it to the end of the video, I appreciate you so much. And what I do hope you take away from this case this week is that you should really be aware of the kind of person you have in your life. You should try to be like very observant of the type of person they are, how they react to certain situations, how they are in arguments. Look, don't ignore a red flag when you see it. Don't, as hard as it would be, because I know that when we are in love, when we have a person in our life, when it's still that early stage of the relationship, you ignore all red flags, you ignore all negatives about a person, and you just try to see them as perfect as you possibly could. But I really hope that you guys learn from this, because I wouldn't want anything like this to happen to any of you. This was seriously something tragic to happen to Karabo, and I'm very sorry to her family. I'm sorry to the Mokoena family for what you endured. This man took away your daughter, he took away your sister, this man took away your friend, and he will just rot in prison for what he did. But for you guys watching this, thank you guys again for being with me this week. Thank you for supporting my channel. And if you are new, like I said, please don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and comment down below what you think. And I would very much appreciate it if you stay tuned for the next video coming to you again next week. And yeah, guys, my name is Prince, like I said, and I will be seeing you again next week. Have a great one.